Welcome to the Adobe Illustrator chapter. Illustrator allows you to create graphics and type in vector format. Vector graphics are resolution independent, which means you can resize graphics from business card size to billboards, and they maintain high quality. In this chapter, you'll learn to create various vector assets that can easily be used for print, web, interactive video, and mobile devices. Let's get started. What we have here is our Big City Pet Sitters logo. You'll find it in the Chapter 2 Project Files folder. When you open the file, you might get a missing font warning. The font used to create the original logo was Code Pro Demo. It can be downloaded from myfonts.com, or you can substitute it with any font you choose. Either way will be fine. Throughout the course of this chapter, we are going to recreate this logo and learn all about Illustrator in the process. But for now, let's learn what some of the tools, panels, and menu items are, and also learn about the preferences. For this lesson, I'll be on the PC. However, I'll tell you Mac shortcuts as we go along. Well, this is an open document. You'll notice right in the top left the name of the file. Let's take a look at some of the tools. Illustrator has many tools for creating vector artwork, selecting, modifying, coloring, moving, rotating, and all sorts of other things that you might want to do with your Illustrator objects. The black selection tool right here is probably one of the most common tools. It is used to select your objects. You'll also notice that as you hover over your tools, you see a little flyout menu with a shortcut in parentheses. Shortcuts are especially handy when you want to use tools very quickly and you don't want to use your mouse to go select another tool. So what does that mean exactly? Well, let's check it out. You'll notice here at the bottom of the list there are two tools that we use a lot. One is the hand tool and another one is the zoom tool. See the shortcut Z for that? Well, instead of using my mouse to go select the zoom tool, it may be that I'm working on my document and coloring or creating objects or whatever else, right? If I want to zoom in, if I hold down the Z key, notice how my cursor turns into the magnifying glass, and that'll quickly let me zoom in to whatever I drag my marquee around, okay? Two other great shortcuts for zooming in and out. I'm on a PC, so I'm going to do a Control minus. You will do a Command minus on the Mac. And Control plus or Command plus will allow you to zoom in. Now, if you are zoomed in, another helpful tool is the hand tool. It's located right to the left of the magnifying glass. The hand tool lets you move around your workspace. So you can simply move around your workspace at any time with a hand tool. Let me show you another great shortcut while we're here. I'll go up and choose the selection tool. And at any time, if I want to use the hand tool, a great shortcut is to hold down the space bar, and that temporarily gives you the hand tool, and you can move around your document just simply by holding down the space bar. Now, you don't want to try that if you're creating text because that's the only tool that the space bar doesn't work as the grabber hand. The great thing about Illustrator, again, is every object or every path can be scaled without any resolution loss. The lines are crisp and sharp at any size. Also, what you might notice is that every object can have a stroke and a fill. So whatever you select on your workspace, whether it's this object here, whether it's text, or maybe even part of our pet logo dog, can have a stroke and a fill. Let's start by selecting the skyline in the back. Whichever object is selected, you are going to see the fill color represented here in the Tools panel or the stroke color. In this case, our selected object doesn't have a stroke. We can add one if we want, and we'll do that in a later lesson. What I want to do now is change the fill color, and we can do that by double-clicking the fill box, and this is the Adobe color picker. Whatever color you choose from here, if we click OK, your selected object becomes that color. Now, by default, this big blue box in the background is on, and that's called a bounding box. It's up to you if you want to leave that on or turn that off. In later lessons, we'll learn how to do both. Now, we'll deselect, and Command Z or Control Z is a shortcut for undo. Illustrator lets us undo as many times as we need to. You could also use the menu at the top to undo any changes. Alright, we'll get into more of these tools in detail a little bit later on as we create all kinds of artwork in this chapter. But for now, let's continue our journey looking around. Across the top, we have a lot of different menu items. As you hover over each of these, you'll be able to see all kinds of things that you can do in Illustrator. You can work with type and objects and selections. But what I want to call your attention to now is the window menu. This may look familiar. This is how we'll open any panels that we need to open throughout this lesson. It's just like every other Adobe app. If you don't see a panel that you need, you simply go here, click on the panel that you'd like to open, and your panel opens. And when you're finished with your panel, you can close it by clicking the X in the top right corner. All right, very good. Well, what about this guy across the top? This is the control panel. The control panel actually changes based on what you're doing. For example, I have the selection tool active, and as I click on pieces of the artwork, whatever I can do to my selected object with the tool that I have chosen, I'll see shortcuts for that right here in the control panel. So if we select this object here, these are very common shortcuts that you could use to work on your selected object. If we were to go down and click the paintbrush tool and start painting, you may see different options. I'm just going to Command Z a couple times to get back out of there. All right, very good. Now I'm going to click V because that's a shortcut to get to the selection tool, and we'll deselect by clicking away from our object. All right, I would like to call your attention one more time to the window menu at the top. When we make a mess of our workspace, and I do that quite often, it's a very helpful feature to reset your workspace. If you go here to Workspace, where we'll be most of the time for this chapter is Essentials. So we'll just go down and reset Essentials anytime we need to, and that gets our default workspace back. You'll notice over to the right that there's a lot of little icons in this panel here, right? Well, these are actually different panels, and if you need to activate any of these, you simply click the icon that's docked over to the right, and the panel will temporarily open. What that means is if I choose another icon, the one before it will close or collapse. Now, if I needed one of these panels to stay open, not a problem. I simply drag it away from the group. Now, one thing that you might want to remember that's kind of important, some of these panels are collapsed by default. If you ever see a little double arrow right here, that means that there are additional options that you might not see. So it's probably a good idea to go ahead and just click this little double arrow if you ever see it, so you can actually get to more options if you need them. All right, so here we have the Tools panel over to the left. We've learned that Illustrator creates objects. Objects can have a fill color or a stroke color, or in this case, no stroke at all. We've learned about the menus at the top. We've learned that we'll be in the window menu a lot to get to panels that we don't see. And we've also learned to reset our workspace by going to Window, Workspace, and then Reset Essentials. Two other shortcuts that I absolutely love. If you double click the hand tool at any time, that gets you out to full screen view. Double clicking the zoom tool at any time gets you to 100%. Shortcut to get our selection key is V, and then we'll just deselect. Let's talk about one last thing before we move to the next lesson, and that's the preferences. I'm on a PC, so I'll find preferences here under the Edit menu. If we go to Edit, we'll go all the way to the bottom and choose Preferences. If you're on a Mac, you'll go to Illustrator and Preferences. Here, let's open the General category. Here you'll find all kinds of neat things that you can do to have Illustrator work the way you want it to work. Now keep in mind, if you have a document open when you adjust your settings in the preferences, those settings will apply to this document only. If you want your settings to be global, make sure that you don't have any documents open at all. There are all kinds of categories, so be sure to take a look at those. One place that I go a lot is right here to the Units category, and sometimes I prefer to work for my general unit of measure in inches instead of points. For now, we'll leave all the defaults as they are, so we'll just go down and click Cancel.